Okay, so we're going to go ahead and just start. I'm sure people will join us as the time goes on. So thank you all for signing up for the online job search digital skills training. My name is Jemila Abdulai, and I am going to be running this segment. And for starters, we're just going to go through what we can expect today. So first of all, I'll give an overview, which is what I'm doing right now. And then we'll talk about why job search is important and why it's important to know how to job search. We'll look at some of the key platforms and avenues for finding jobs. Then we'll touch on CVs or resumes and other essential tools that you need to have in your job search toolbox. After that, we're going to talk about some online etiquette, specifically with regards to using platforms like LinkedIn and how to reach out to people via email. And then we'll talk more generally about networking tips. And then after that, we'll do a Q&A. So I know a lot of you had a lot of questions from when you signed up. And so I hope that we can get to answer some of those questions through this presentation, or if you still have questions afterwards, we'll take a couple of questions at the end. So for those who missed my very quick intro while we were waiting, my name is Jemila Abdulai, and I'm the founder of Circumspecte.com. It's the digital platform that I started as a blog 13 years ago. And one of the things that we really try to highlight on our platform is to provide useful resources for people to improve their lives. We have a lot of career resources, as you can see from the screen. That's just a snippet of some of the resources we have, from tips to interviews with people who, are doing interesting things in Ghana or on the continent. And the whole goal here is to give you options, to give you information that you can use to improve yourself. So this webinar is part of that vision of Circumspect. And it's the first free online job search skills webinar. We've done this same training offline with a partner, but our goal is really to get this information to as many people as possible so that hopefully you can find your jobs or at least get interviews. So before we start, a little bit about me. I'd like to know who is in the room. So if you can just use the chat box to type in your city and your country and your industry or sector of interest. So let me just give you a few minutes to type that in so that we have a sense of who is around, and maybe a bit of what people are looking to go into. Okay, I'm seeing Accra, Ghana. I'm assuming I'll see a lot of Accra, Ghanas. I see Jos, Nigeria, Accra, Ghana, Tema, Kumasi, Bolga, Mombasa, Kenya, Lome and Cape Town, Tamale, Takrade. Well, clearly Ghana is going to be the winner here, but we have a few other people from other countries. So thank you all for joining in. Sector-wise, I've seen advertising, energy, international education and development, population studies, media and comms, gender, aviation, basically a lot. And so it's great to see all of you here, and great to see that you all have very diverse backgrounds or interests. My goal with this webinar is to provide you with essential insights and tools. So it's not going to be fine-tuned to any specific sector because, as you can see, you're very diverse, but it's going to give you things that you can use and then fine-tune to your specific industry or sector. So I think we can move on now. Feel free to keep putting in your comments in there, and then we'll move on to see how we can actually start our online job search process. Now, before you start anything, it's always very important to be clear on why you are doing that thing, to be clear on what your purpose is or what your goal is. And so what I always recommend is before you start your job search process, you need to ask yourself, why are you job searching? Now, it might not seem very obvious why this is important, but if, for instance, you are in a current job, I know many of you are looking to transition. So if, for instance, you're in a job right now where it's very fast paced, you're always working and you want more work-life balance, you need to be clear on that so that you look for jobs that will give you work-life balance. If it's the opposite, maybe your current job is not challenging enough and you're looking for jobs that are more challenging, knowing that will help you look for jobs which will be more challenging to you. If you have just finished university and you're looking for a job, and let's say your goal is to gain skills in, let's say, engineering, that will help you fine tune and zone in your job searching in the engineering sector. So that is why it's really, really important to have a goal and be clear on why you are job searching. The second thing you need to figure out or answer for yourself is, where are you currently in your journey? Some of you indicated that you've been job searching. Most of you actually have just started job searching. A lot of you are a few months in, and some of you are employed but looking to transition. So not immediately, but eventually. And that's also important because typically you need a couple of months in order to job search. So if you know that your income is running out in the next 3 months, you want to probably start job searching like 5 or 6 months in advance, because the job search process actually does take a while. But this also means that if you have already been job searching and you haven't made too much leeway, don't be disheartened, because that is the process. That is unfortunately part of the process. Now, I thought it would be interesting to see some statistics, because the other thing you need to do is have a sense of the landscape you're in. Of course, these statistics are probably going to change over the course of this year because of global events. And the job market really does get influenced by what's happening in the economy, what's happening with regards to the local or global economy, what kind of new inventions are coming up. And so new skill sets might be in demand and all of that stuff. So it's also important to understand the context within which you are operating. But as of 2019, 6.8% of Ghana's labor force of over 12 million were unemployed, and 9% of Ghana's youth were unemployed last year. And youth employment typically refers to people within the ages of 15 to 24 who are available for work but are unable to find work. So for those of you who have finished high school to university, that segment of people, if you're actively looking for work, then you would fall into those metrics. Beyond that, I thought I would share this. This is a summary of your signups so that we have a sense of who is in the room. And this is also important because the fact that you are a university graduate and you're going for, let's say, your first formal job, does not mean that you're only competing with just university graduates. So here you have a lot of university graduates who signed up for this session. You also have a lot of entry-level professionals and university students, as well as mid-level professionals. And then we have a few other stay-at-home people or national service personnel and so on who are looking to go into the job market. This is not to make you feel disheartened. It's to let you know the reality of the market you're in. So a lot of people are probably gunning for very similar jobs. And statistics actually say, from the World Labor Organization, actually say that 13.1% of the employed in Ghana are actually underemployed, which means that they're doing jobs that they might be overqualified for. So the big question through all of this, and why it's really important to be very strategic about how you're going about job search, is that you need to stand out. There's no two ways about it. Millions, if not thousands, millions of people are probably applying for jobs every day. And in the current COVID context where people are losing their jobs, more people are probably applying for jobs. So at the end of the day, how do you stand out from your competition? That is the question. I also wanted to share this report from the World Economic Forum, because especially if you find yourself in a learning environment, it's important to kind of pay attention to the trends and see what employers or recruiters are looking ahead at, like what kind of skill sets do they want. If your current educational program does not offer you a chance to develop those skills, then you can use extracurriculars to develop those skills so that when you come out, you have a variety of skill sets which will make you a better candidate when it comes to job options. So in 2015, complex problem solving was a big skill, and it still is in 2020. But we see a flip of some sorts. For example, when it comes to critical thinking, that was a key skill, number 4 out of 10 in 2015, and now it's number 2. Also, creativity was number 10 in 2015, and now it's 3. And if you pay attention to all of these trends, what you see is as the world moves towards automation, or if you want to say, as the robots come, what's basically going to happen is that recruiters or companies, organizations are going to need people with, in quotes, human skills. That's not to say that being able to do math is not a human skill, not at all. But math is something a computer can do. Can a computer figure out how to be emotionally intelligent? Maybe to some degree, but not to the degree that a human being can. So as you are doing your job search, pay attention to the future of work skills in your industry, or pay attention to future of work roles. So like data analysis is going to be a big thing. From now, it already is, and it's going to continue to be a big thing going into the future. Healthcare, as we can see, especially with COVID, is going to remain very important. So do a bit of research to see what the trends are for your industry. And if they do not look to be too promising, then you also want to look at what other industries might complement your industry that you can shift into. Okay, so moving on. Now, the question of where to find job opportunities. So I'm sure many of us have used some of these options. The offline option, I don't know if too many of us use it these days, but newspapers could still be a good avenue for finding jobs. I know in Ghana, the Daily Graphic will often put out like tenders or put out a call for applications, sometimes for specific jobs, usually for mid to higher level jobs, I would say. But that's a good place to also look and see what companies and organizations are looking for, even if it's not a job that you are qualified for right now, but it's a job that you see along your career trajectory, then that's something to keep in mind. Just pay attention to some of the roles and responsibilities of the job, and also some of the skill sets that they require, so that you can use this time to prepare towards that. Job boards are another one. If you're in a school setting, especially, you probably have a student job board or something of the sort where they put out announcements for jobs or for vacancies, whether it's for service-oriented vacancies, maybe being a waiter or a waitress, things like that. Some offices also do that, but I guess most of us will not have access to those offices unless we already work there. Billboards, posters, and flyers. Flyers, I've seen a lot of here in Accra. You can be driving around and see a notice, a flyer where it shouldn't probably not be, but flyers can also be an avenue for seeing if there are any job ads out there. And then of course, radio and TV as well could be avenues for that. But the way the world is working right now, a lot of those opportunities are actually moving online. So companies and organizations and recruiters are increasingly turning online to look for job candidates. Why? Because it offers them an opportunity to also scan candidates. It offers them a chance to also get a sense of who you are before they invite you in for the interview, or before they say, yes, we want to work with this person or have this person join our team. So you want to pay attention to job websites. right? There are dedicated job websites, either locally, for example, in Ghana, you have JobNet Africa, Jobberman. I think Jobberman is also available in Nigeria. In the US and abroad, you have things like Monster Careers, where you can go onto these job platforms and look at what is available and what companies and organizations are looking out for. So definitely pay attention to job websites. Company websites are another place to look. Typically, if you are very clear that you want to work with, let's say you want to work with General Electric and they have openings across Africa, you can check job websites for that, but you can also just go directly to their website and look at their job board or their job page and see what is available. And in most cases, you can actually sign up for alerts so that anytime there's a new job opening, they let you know, and then you can, sign up or register or apply as needed. Social media is also a great place to find jobs. Of course, most people know LinkedIn, and we'll talk a bit about LinkedIn shortly, because LinkedIn was born as a job board of some sorts. That was the initial place where you would go and find jobs and apply for jobs and engage with recruiters. But increasingly, jobs are finding their way onto other, in quotes, less professional social media platforms. Twitter is a big one. So I know a lot of people don't understand Twitter and don't want to bother with Twitter, but if you're job searching, I highly recommend creating a Twitter account, if nothing at all, just to check on the hashtags that are related to your industry and see if there are any opportunities in there. Because I think every single day I go through my timeline, I will find somebody looking for a writer, somebody looking for a lawyer, or someone looking for someone who has a very specific expertise. And you don't necessarily find that on other platforms. And the plus with social media is that you not automatically, but you already have an in. You have someone specific you can reach out to. Whereas with job boards, you're going through a system, and we're going to talk about those systems soon. Email lists are another great platform for finding jobs. Email lists could be your school email list. It could be your work email list. It could be your email list with people who have similar interests as you. It could be organizations that you are part of, that kind of thing. But pay attention to email lists as well, because again, the value there is that it's a very concentrated platform where there is some level of trust between the people on that platform, or at the very minimum, there's some linkage between the people on that platform. So if it's a school email list, then you all went to the same school. So if, let's say, we went to the same school and I put out a job ad and you send me a message and tell me that, oh, can I find out more information about this job? And I know that this is linked to the school I went to, I'm more likely to give you that information because we already have something in common than if a random person sends me a message to ask about a job. I'll probably want to get a sense of who it is first before I do a referral or before I recommend. So take advantage of the networks you already have, and especially if those networks are online and on email, try and leverage those networks to find your jobs. Now, we're already talking about networking, but family, friends, and colleagues are definitely one place that you want to start looking for your jobs. And what do I mean by that? You need to let them know that you're job searching. Let them know the kind of job you're looking for. Let them know what you're interested in, and let them know, oh, maybe I'd like to move into a new job within the next year. Why is this important? Because each of us has our own networks. And so when you let someone who knows you pretty well know what you're looking for, then it means that you're indirectly tapping into their network. Meaning if someone sends something to them that they think fits what you're looking for, they're more likely to share it with you. So you definitely want to make sure that you're letting your family, friends, and colleagues, of course, with colleagues, it can get a bit political. So you need to be selective about which colleagues you are sharing this information with. Events are a good place to also get a sense of like what potential job opportunities are on the market. Especially, I mean, we don't really have physical events anymore, but if you are at home right now, this is a good time to actually join webinars that are linked to the industry you're in or interested in. Because at some point somewhere, someone is going to talk about what current trends are or what's happening right now or what future trends might be. And those are the things that you want to pay attention to. Also, we'll talk a bit more about how to reach out to people. But when you go to an event and you have an interaction with someone, that becomes something that you can leverage on to build a relationship and hopefully to get more information about a company, organization, or potential career opportunities. Internships, I'm happy to see that internships are becoming a thing in Ghana and I think in other African countries as well. So most of us will probably say, I don't want to work for free. But the thing is, you need to rethink what working for free means. If at the end of the day, you're getting valuable skills, valuable insights, you're getting to build your network, that's not free, right? That's not free because that is something that can pay you multiple times over than if they handed you a stipend to say, okay, here's your lunch money for the day. So I really want to challenge you to broaden your outlook about what a career opportunity might be. Not all of them are paid opportunities. Sometimes they might be internships. But the plus side of internships and also linked to that is volunteering is that this is especially for students or recent graduates, is that it allows you to confirm your interests. That's one thing that they do. If you thought that you wanted to be in accounting, for example, and you ended up doing an internship at an accounting firm and you got to go through the day-to-day life of what an accountant does and you realize you don't like it, it's better that you realize that now than that you realize that 20 years down the line when it's very hard for you to switch over into a new field. Right. So that's one thing that these, in quotes, unpaid opportunities offer. What I've always recommended to my mentees is that when you are starting out in your career, prioritize learning. Yes, money is important. Yes, you need to pay your bills. Hopefully your bills are not too high yet, but prioritize learning because when you are able to learn and gain the skill sets that you need, then you can leverage those as transferable skills and then you'll be able to work anywhere else, hopefully, as needed. I'll give a quick example. So when I finished university, I went to university in the United States. And when I finished university, it was in 2009. It was at the height of the global economic crisis. So similar to this time, right? This is why I'm kind of passionate about this because I know how it feels to feel very frustrated when you're looking for a job and can't find one. It was at the height of the economic crisis. And I probably sent over 50 applications out, maybe 100, I don't remember, but most of them were rejections. I think I probably got like 5 interviews out of that whole bunch of maybe 100 applications. And at the end of the day, what I had to do was I actually had to stay on campus for 2 more months. I graduated, but I had to talk to my campus job and see if I could work with them over the summer period until I was able to find a more permanent career opportunity. Yes, this was not the ideal situation. I would have loved to get my dream job immediately, but what it allowed me to do was it allowed me to further build skill sets and become clear on what I was interested in. The campus job offered me free housing, free internet, all that stuff. So I kept my costs low in that way. And I had a lot of time to actually take my time to apply for jobs and not panic. Because also when you are in panic mode and ready for any job possible, that can end up going against you when it comes time to negotiation if you do get a job offer, because you're more likely to just pick the first thing that they offer you and then sell yourself short. So I hope that this gives you a sense of some of the places that you can find job opportunities. I've already talked about all of these, but just for those in Ghana, these are some job portals that you can look at. I haven't really used Tonaton, but I know that they post things on there. And then if you are in, let's say, the NGO, nonprofit, international space, you want to also pay attention to some of the international job platforms, because you have international organizations and companies that are hiring locally, but they might not show up on your radio, local radio, TV, or newspaper. So you need to pay attention to platforms like Monster, Career Builder, Indeed, and Idealist especially are more for nonprofit NGO type work. You can also go through recruiting agencies. So I know in Ghana we have Lane, but there's also Access Human Capital. Bawoni Consult usually posts job ads on Twitter. And beyond that, Google can be your friend, right? So what you also want to do is just do searches for tech jobs in Africa if you're interested in technology, or if you are looking at advertising jobs in Accra, and try to be very specific, right? So be specific about the industry, the type of job, and maybe the geographical location. Okay, moving on. Now, the thing about job portals is that they have a lot of different features. And if you don't understand how job portals work, then you might be putting out applications, but because you don't understand how they work, it's not going to result in too much for you. The first thing you need to do is, when you're looking at the job listings, try to use search parameters that match the kind of job or opportunity that you're looking for. So if, for instance, I was looking to go into PR here in, let's say in Dakar, Senegal, I would be doing a search for PR, maybe entry-level jobs in Dakar, Senegal. Search parameters are very important. You also want to make sure that you create an account or profile. Why is this important? Because when you create an account or profile, then you usually will have access to other tools like being able to save your searches, being able to upload your CV, being able to input more data. And so instead of you having to try to remember whether you already applied for a job or whether you came across that job listing already, you can just create an account and make sure that you're saving everything. And then you'll be able to look back and say, okay, I already applied for this job. They said that they received it. This is what I'm waiting for. I also recommend creating for yourself. You can create a simple Google Excel sheet where you track what you are applying for. So if you know that you've done 10 applications, and you can list the name of the organization, the role you're applying for, definitely input the deadline so that you don't forget. And if you can, schedule the deadline into your calendar. And then list like what the job application requirements are. Some jobs will just ask for your resume or CV. Some will ask for resume, CV, cover letter. And then depending on the type of role you might be going into. So for instance, as someone who has a writing background, a lot of the jobs that I was applying for were very heavy on writing. And so they would require writing samples as well. You also need to pay attention to if they need like references or that kind of thing, and notify your references that, oh, people might be calling you because I'm applying for jobs. So those are things that you also need to keep in mind. You can create that on a Google Sheet that you can track yourself, so that if, God forbid, this job portal you're using is down, you don't lose all that information and you can still keep track of what you're doing. So the application portal, I'm sure some of you know ATS, that's application tracking system. Is basically the same thing. And what it also allows you to do is to start, save, and then track the application process. Sometimes they will tell you, okay, it's been submitted, and then it's being reviewed, and then if you've been called in for an interview, you might have those details in there. But with all of this, what you want to pay attention to, because it's online, most of what happens online, and this goes for job search, it goes for social media marketing, it goes for branding, keywords are very important, because the web is literally built on terms and keywords. And whenever anyone comes online and starts looking for something, you're either inputting keywords or you're inputting phrases and terms. So think in that same way, because there's a merger of the human and the machine. And especially when you're dealing with the ATS, that is a machine. So what do I mean by pay attention to keywords? Look at the job description and see what keywords are in the job description. because usually employers will tell you exactly what they want. They usually do. They'll say, we want somebody who has this number of years experience, who has expertise in this, who has a degree in that, etc. And then you want to replicate those keywords. Of course, I don't mean just copy and paste, it has to make sense, but replicate those keywords in your application, whether that is in your resume or in your cover letter, for example. Make sure that those keywords pop in there, because when it comes to the ATS, what it does is it scans your application to see which keywords are in there. And then based on the number of keywords, relevant keywords that might be in there, then it moves you along to the next process of the application process, where you might have someone else, an actual human being, scan your CV. So it's very important to pay attention to that. Another thing you need to pay attention to is to keep your resume simple. Don't make it complicated. I'm using resume, I'll explain why, but when I say resume, it also means CV. I'm just gonna use resume and I'll explain why I'm focused on resume. Keep your resume simple, clean, easy to read. Because if you try to put plenty colors and plenty symbols and different font styles, the machine is not going to read all of that. The machine does not really care about how beautiful it looks. It cares about, can I read the information, and does the information have some of the keywords and details that I have been asked to flag for the recruiter? That's what the system cares about. So keep that in mind when you are applying, and pay attention to the format in which you're asked to submit such documents. Sometimes they might ask you to submit it in PDF. Other times they might specify that it has to be in Microsoft Word. Whatever the case, pay attention to what they ask you to put and try as much as possible to stick to that. Because if you don't do that, then you're setting yourself up for some issues with regards to the machine won't even pass you on to the next person. So you never even move from being in the system. Okay, now what job search tools should you have in your toolbox? Most of us know about CVs, we know about resumes. Some of us know about cover letters, and there are a whole bunch of other tools that you can use. So elevator pitches, for example, are very big in the United States. I've not really encountered too many people doing an elevator pitch on me when we meet. So that is a tool that you can also use to stand out a bit more. And then we'll touch on a few others. But the main thing is that all these tools allow you to present yourself and highlight your skill sets, your strengths and your interests to prospective employers. And the goal here is to make sure that it sparks interest in you and opens doors to hopefully an interview and eventually a job. So the main thing you're trying to do here is to spark interest. So let's just run very quickly through the main ones that most people know. The CV or resume is typically a summary of your job accomplishments and relevant experiences. It's usually a document. I say usually because I have seen video resumes or video CVs where someone is talking like I'm talking right now and talking about themselves and what they've done and so on. But that usually is for very, very specific kinds of career opportunities, and often more in the creative space. So if you're applying for a very creative job, for example, that requires you to have some video editing skills or video production skills, you could consider doing a CV like that. Why? Because you're showcasing your skill sets. They get to see you as well. And it would definitely make you stand out, because most people are going to just send the regular PDF document. The second tool that some people have used, others haven't, this is based on what you guys sent me when you registered, is your cover letter. And the cover letter is basically your official introduction or declaration of interest. It is not always a PDF, a standalone document. Sometimes they won't ask you for a cover letter. In that case, consider your email to be your cover letter, right? The email message that you send saying, oh, I'm applying for this job. Think of it as a cover letter. I'm going to stay on cover letter a little bit because I'm not going to dive too much into it in this segment. So I want to just give you some quick pointers on that. So for your cover letter, what you want to do is you want to bring to life some of your experiences relevant. Everything here has to be relevant, some of your relevant job experiences. So if on your resume you highlighted one particular job that you are very proud of because you felt like you were able to make a lot of impact, try and highlight that in your cover letter. And not just highlight, oh, I worked and did this. Like, give us a sense of what were the results. How did that impact the organization or the project? And what skill sets did you use in that process? Because at the end of the day, the recruiter wants to know that you have the skills to do the job. This is also an opportunity to highlight some of your interests and your personality. So for example, I typically would say that I work very well, whether in teams or alone, right? That's something that I always highlight because I can do that. So that flexibility means that if the recruiter is looking for someone who'll be working in a team, I fit that. If they're looking for someone who can work independently, I fit that as well. That's something that I can say. So think about the way you work, how well you are at communicating, for example. If you're really great with people, if you have been great at solving problems, this is where you put flesh to that stuff that you just bullet pointed on your resume and put it across. I would say try to think of no more than 3 stories that you're telling in your cover letter. Cover letter, in this case, I'm talking about the actual document, not the email. Try to think of about 2 to 3 things that you will highlight in that way. It's also a good opportunity to highlight something that you might be very proud of, an accomplishment that you're very proud of, but which might not necessarily look like the most obvious thing to include on a resume. So for instance, if you've done some volunteer work and it was something that you're really, really proud of, because the cover letter allows you more words, you'll be able to explain a little more why you did that thing, why you are very proud of it, and how it can link back to the job that you're applying for, how it might be of value to the job you're applying for. So the cover letter really helps bring flesh to the resume, which you can consider to be like the skeleton of some sort. Okay, elevator pitch is basically a verbal introduction in about 30 seconds or less. My name is Jemila Abdulai. I am the founder of Circumspecte.com, a blog I started in 2007. And today we have trained over 1,000 people in digital and career skills. That's probably an example of a quick elevator pitch. I've told you about myself, told you something interesting that I did, and I highlighted an impact. We'll touch on the elevator pitch a little later because I think that might be important for many of us. But beyond these 3, you also have introductory emails, right? The email that you first send to someone that you're maybe trying to ask a question, get some insight from, or just say like, do you have job openings at your organization? It's very important how you do that intro email. Informational interviews are tools that are used primarily, I've seen them used in the United States. I haven't seen them done so much in Ghana or in other African countries. But basically an informational interview is you contacting someone who, let's say, fits the profile of the kind of professional you hope to be, or someone who works in a company or organization that you're looking to go into, and you basically offer them sobolo or coffee. You can say, oh, I would really like to have a conversation with you about XYZ. Would it be okay for me to buy you coffee sometime so that we can have a talk? Again, this is used largely in American context. So there's a culture of let's go for coffee there. I would say adapt it to your local context. Maybe it might, I don't know if you go and have fufu with someone you're hoping to potentially get a job with, but try and think along the lines of how can I request some of your time without making it seem like a burden to this person, right? And yeah, for informational interviews, I would also say that try to ask for a minimum amount of time, maybe 15 to 20 minutes. Don't ask for 2 hours. If you ask me for 2 hours, No, it's not happening. But if you ask me, oh, could I talk to you? Could I give you a phone call for like 10 minutes to just have a sense of X, Y, Z? And you have to be very specific about what you're asking. This all boils back to the intro emails, which we'll be talking about soon. Now, your online portfolio or blog, if you have one, is another great tool for potentially finding jobs. With Circumspect, for example, since I have a lot of writing on the platform, and when I was in school, a lot of my writing was focused on economics, what I was studying, and global affairs, African development. So a lot of my content on the site at the time was focused on those areas. And what started happening was I started getting job offers because people would go onto the site and they would be like, oh, she cares about this stuff and she knows how to write, and her thoughts about XYZ are interesting. Let's see if there's a possibility to work together. Or I would just get like interesting opportunities. So one of those opportunities was to do a meeting with Obama's team before he visited his first visit to Africa, right? So they wanted to know like, what do young Africans care about? And how they found me was because of the content on my website, then blog. So think about the work that you have already done and figure out how you can showcase that or highlight that. If you are the kind of person who's great at writing, you can share your thoughts on things happening in your industry. For example, with COVID, now is a great time to do that kind of thing, right? To kind of imagine what the future of your industry might look like, or think about how processes and work in your industry should be adapted. If you start sharing that kind of information, number one, you're not only highlighting the kind of expertise or interest you already have, you're also showcasing things like communication skills. And usually people who are interested in that kind of thing will find you, which leads to recommendations. A lot of the jobs I've done as a consultant have actually come through recommendations. I would say 90 to 95% of them, right? I haven't actively applied for jobs or for consulting jobs, except if they contacted me to say, oh, Jemila, we think you'll be a fit for this. Could you apply? Then I apply. So recommendations are very, very important. If you're looking to transition out of your current job, one of the things you should be doing is to start getting recommendations from your team members. Most of the time, they will also require you to give a recommendation back, which I think is fair enough, right? So if you know, don't focus so much on how many recommendations you get. Focus on the people who know the value of the work that you do. If you have 3 solid recommendations who can vouch for you and really capture what you have to offer, it's better than having 10 recommendations where they just say, oh, she's a good team player, end of story, right? So start thinking about the people you've worked with. For students, recommendations can also come from your professor. They can come from your fellow classmates, especially if you've done some work in, let's say, a club or a student organization. The goal here is to find people who understand what you have to offer and who have worked with you to a degree where they can speak on your behalf. That's basically what you want to do. Okay, we talked about internships and volunteerships already. They're basically ways to get your foot through the door. And hopefully, if you do a really good job, then that can lead to a potential career opportunity. At the very minimum, what it would do is it will give you skill sets that might come in handy in the future. When I tell you that everything you do will have value at some point, like this is one of my big takeaways for the past year. Things that I probably didn't pay too much attention to are things that I'm now doing and getting paid for. So never discount something that you might end up doing. And if at the end of the day, you only have the option of, let's say, going for a service job, maybe working as a restaurant waiter or waitress, I would say still do it. I know Ghanaians, we have a certain thing about working in certain places, but restaurants are actually a great place to meet a lot of different kinds of people. And I think if you deliver good service, it also helps you build your interpersonal skills, which regardless of what industry or organization you find yourself in, eventually come in handy. I was having a conversation with one tech professional yesterday, and he was talking about the fact that his very first job, he's an engineer, he currently works with Microsoft, and he was talking about the fact that his very first job was one he did not like, but what it ended up doing was it gave him the tools and positioned him well to get his next job and then get on track for a tech career. So don't discount any job opportunity and focus more on gaining the skill sets you need. Okay, moving on. So your resume or CV is basically your representative, is the person or the thing that's going to speak on your behalf while you are not there. Basically, it needs to make a good first impression. It needs to spark interest and then hopefully open the doors to an interview or eventually convince a recruiter to hire you. That's the goal of the resume or the CV. Now, I've been using resume and CV interchangeably, but they're two different things. So let's just break this down very quickly. I'm going to start with the CV because most of us know CVs, and in our part of the world, we use CVs. A CV or curriculum vitae is basically a course of life. It's a comprehensive overview of everything, in quotes, that you have done in terms of career, academic background, research, achievements, awards, publications, and personal interests. It's usually very detailed and long. The minimum usually is 2 pages. I have a CV and my CV is 2-page minimum, right? And I don't even want to go beyond that. But I've seen CVs as long as 13 pages, depending on how long the professional has been in the workspace. So I think these were, these were diplomats, government officials who shared their CVs in a former job. And yeah, it can go 10, 20 pages even. But I'll say that today, the human attention span is actually less than that of a goldfish. Human attention span, I think, is 6 or 8 seconds, I can't remember which, and a goldfish is 9 or so. So you don't want to be bombarding people with too much information upfront. The CV is usually used in Ghana, in the UK, and of course, countries that are associated with the Commonwealth and the rest of the world. Resumes tend to be used in the US, but because of American influence, resumes are finding their way even into places like Ghana. A CV is usually organized chronologically, meaning you start off with the current position or role that you occupy and work your way back in chronological order. And it also captures non-academic and non-career elements. So on a CV, you'll probably find somebody's marriage status, you might find how many children they have, you might find their religion. Again, this depends on the context you find yourself in. The resume is an introduction of self. You're not talking about your entire life. You're summarizing the relevant work history, education, skills, and accomplishments. It's typically 1 page, but depending on how flexible the prospective employer might be, you can make it 2 pages, but I recommend keeping it to 1 page. It's used mainly in the US and Canada, and it's organized by skills and relevance. So difference here, one is talking about everything you've had to offer, and then the resume is giving a snapshot of very specific things. It's fit to purpose and focused on careers. I don't want to be seeing things about, there's certain things that should just not be on your resume. We'll talk about that soon. And of course, you have to make sure that you include your contact information. So for this session, I'm focusing on resumes because, number one, because it's a 1-pager, it forces you to think about what are the most relevant pieces of information you need to put on there. Number two, because it's 1 page, it means that it is more likely to be reviewed by the recruiter. Recruiters typically spend between and I think I heard one recruiter say she spends like 10 seconds scanning each CV. Some take 30 seconds. If you're lucky, if they really like you, they'll take 60 seconds. So the first look at your CV is a scan. We're not looking at every single detail. We are scanning for what? The keywords. This is why I mentioned you need to make sure that you feed in the keywords similar to what's on the job description into your documents, because that is what we're going to be looking out for. So the types of resumes, you have the chronological, which is the most common, and it's usually structured around your work history from your recent to the oldest role or position. This is more likely to be used by mid-level professionals, so people who have done some significant work and have, in quotes, formal work history to show. Functional or skills focused tends to be focused on relevant skills and experience. And this type of resume is ideal for students and recent grads and also those seeking a career change. Why? Because you might not necessarily have any, in quotes, formal work experience in the sector you're looking to go into, but that does not mean that you don't have anything to show. So one of the main questions I saw from a lot of the registrants was, I'm a student and I'm applying for a job and they're asking for how many years of experience and relevant experience, but I don't have any experience. You have experience, because even when you are in school, you're learning things like team building. If you have a class project and it's a group project, you're learning team building skills. If you've had to do any amount of research, whether in the field or online, those are research skills. If you've written a decent paper and know how to communicate effectively, those are communication and writing skills, for instance. So you do have relevant skills and experience, but the question here is, how are you going to highlight that? And so the functional or skills-based resume allows you to do that. So you would, instead of saying work history, you will say experience, which opens it up a bit more. And then you will say skills, right? So for instance, let's say that you were the secretary for the student organization, the student governance council in your school. You can highlight some of the results that happened under your tenure as the secretary. You can highlight what your tasks were, and you can also highlight what skills you used in that process, right? And so that helps you come up with your resume as a student or a recent graduate. And then for those who are seeking a career change or looking to transition, what you want to focus on is transferable skills, right? So you might think that, oh, I'm an engineer and I'm looking to move into, I'm trying to think right now. Okay, I'm an engineer, I'm looking to move into a project management role with a tech company. Like, where is the link? And you might not see the link, obviously, but organizing might be a big part of both roles. So then you highlight more of what your skill sets were, what you were able to achieve, and your process, like how you worked with people, how you made sure that results were achieved, that kind of thing. The combination resume is a mix of work history and relevant skills and experience. So this is more for if you've had a bit of relevant work experience, but you also have skill sets and experience that might not be the most obvious for the role you're going for. You can use the combination resume. And normally I would say that the combination resume helps you to target your resume to the company or job role. Whatever resume you decide to do, you need to make sure that you do research on the company or organization you're looking to join. Again, companies will tell you who they are, they will tell you what they care about, and they will tell you what they're looking for. What you need to do is take your time to do research and understand what they want, and then be able to tell them how you can get them, help them achieve the things that they are trying to achieve. So the key elements of a resume, you have the header. And with the header, you typically have, your full name, your professional email. I'm stressing this because personally, if I see an email address from someone who's looking for a job, or I'm reviewing CVs and it's not professional, I don't take you seriously. So yeah, I know that you think that you are a very hot looking, gorgeous, handsome man or woman, whatever the case, but this is not the place to be highlighting that stuff. So if you do not have a professional email, please make sure you have a professional email. If you are still a student, then you want to use your school email. Why? Because it gives a certain level of credibility that, oh, you are actually a student who is enrolled in such and such school. Then you can add your phone number, address, you don't really have to add the city, but if it's part of the address, of course, you can put it there. And then if you have an online portfolio, or if you have a very good LinkedIn page, you can also put your web link in there. Now, after the header, normally I've seen this mainly in Ghana and other African countries, but not so much in the US. People will have the profile or the summary of qualifications. I personally do not use it, but if you feel like you want to have a profile to say, this is the kind of thing I'm looking for, feel free to do that. I wouldn't recommend it because already if you're working with a resume, you're working with one page. And so you want to give information that's going to be relevant. If you're applying for the job, then clearly there's already some interest there, right? And this profile or summary of qualification is something that can actually go into your cover letter or in the email that you send when you're submitting your application. Your education is important, especially if you are currently in school or a recent graduate, or if, let's say, you're in your first entry-level job. I would say keep it for a few years. Why? Because it also speaks a bit to what you have been able to achieve. If you're still in school, you want to include your school name, the degree you're working towards, and your expected graduation date. Expected graduation date, meaning if I'm supposed to graduate in 2021, I will write graduation May 2021 into brackets expected, meaning that's what I'm working towards. If you've already graduated, you can just put your graduation date. Optional are to include your GPA. Of course, GPA does not cover who you are entirely as a human being. I have to say this because I know that for students, there's a lot of pressure. Sometimes if your GPA isn't good, then you feel some way about it. Please, if the GPA is not below like the minimum, put it there. If you don't put it there and you get to, let's say, interview stage, they're going to ask you about it. So put it there. It's clear for everyone, but then focus on the things that you have achieved, right? If you have any honors, you want to include that. If you have a major, a minor. So for instance, for me, my major was economics, my minor was French. You put that in there. And then if there are relevant courses that you've taken that might help in the job you're going into, you can highlight them. So one thing I used to highlight was public speaking. I took a public speaking course and a consulting course. And so when I was starting out as a consultant, those were things I highlighted. I don't include that anymore, but it also speaks to like things that you've learned and what you can offer. And then you move into your relevant work experiences, relevant skills, and then other elements like volunteering, professional memberships, and so on. For the other elements, I would say try to include a few of them because then it gives you a little bit of, it makes you more human and it shows that you don't just care about working, right? But if you don't have space, then you can prioritize some of these other things. So why is a resume or CV valuable? This is just to summarize. It advocates for you. It's a snapshot of your academic interests, accomplishments, skills, expertise, and experience. It documents your strengths, successes, and results, and it sets the tone for a conversation. When you're having an interview, typically the recruiter is going to have your resume in front of them, and the questions that they're going to ask you are going to come from there. So you kind of have some level of, in quotes, control to direct that conversation based on what you put on your resume. And this is why it's very important to make sure that your resume is fit to the role and the organization that you are looking at joining. It also demonstrates what you may offer a potential employer. So if you did a great job with your past employers, then your potential employer feel like, yeah, they're going to do a good job with me too. So this is very quickly to, this is a very old resume of mine. I think this is my very first resume. And I chose this one because I know for students, it's usually very hard for us to figure out what we want to highlight. So this is a combination resume, as I mentioned. Because I was a student, I had my, used my student email, my educational information was up top. And then I had achievements, right? So if you have any awards, that kind of thing, you want to highlight that. Then employment, I listed a few things. And then moving on more to experience, leadership experience, other activities I had done, skills and interests. Now, when you're listing your work experiences, you need to begin either with the most recent, so that's going chronological, or the most relevant. most recruiters, when they're scanning, they pay attention to what's at the top and they might look at what's at the bottom. So things that are happening in the middle can easily not be seen. So try to move the most important things up. And that's a general rule for any writing. Any writing that you might do, focus on putting the most important information up. And then the bottom part you can summarize depending on the type of writing you're doing. So on the on the right-hand side here is an example of the information that you would need to put. If you have your relevant work experience, you definitely want to highlight your position or the job title. You want to highlight the company name. You can highlight the dates of engagement. Typically, I would use month and then year, or I'll just use years. You can highlight the location, city or country. This is particularly important if you're looking to go into international careers, because yeah, for them to see that you've done a lot of work in the field, that kind of thing. And then you want to use the bullet points underneath to highlight either responsibility, something that you were responsible for, accomplishment, something that you accomplished, and result or impact, something that you were able to help generate, right? And so think in terms of bullet points and not necessarily in terms of writing paragraphs, because when you write paragraphs, it's hard to read. And if I can't read it and it's stressing me out, I'm putting it away and taking the next resume. So when you're writing about your accomplishments and results, the questions to ask are, what did I do? How did I do it? That's process. Why did I do it that way? And what were the results? Right. What did I do? How did I do it? Why did I do it that way? And what were the results? So I'm trying to think really quickly if I can come up with one very quickly. Okay, so I might say trained 1,000 African professionals through a virtual website, which led to 50% of them getting jobs, right? What I did, how I did virtually, and the results, they were able to get jobs. So that's an example of, and of course, if there's space, you can say why I did it that way. So those are the things that you want to think about. And you also want to make sure that you're using action verbs, right? You're using words in the active mode and not in the passive mode. Active mode, for instance, if I say the dog was jumped over by a cat. I mean, even the way I'm saying it is too much. And think about if you're going to write that and then read that versus saying the cat jumped over the dog, right? So active is more direct and to the point and punchy, and then passive, usually if you feel yourself going around in circles, it means that you need to edit that sentence. It's not in the active mode. Okay, moving on. Things you need to do for your resumes. I've talked about researching and personalizing. I've talked a bit about showing and not telling. Highlight specific accomplishment. Don't just list your job duties. Too many of us do this. If all you're doing is copying the job description from your current job into your resume, you're not telling me anything, because anybody else who had a similar job, if they're also doing the same thing, you're all the same. Tell me what you were able to achieve and how you were able to impact. And if you can focus on those results, then you have a higher chance of standing out from someone who had a similar background than you. Numbers and figures. So when I gave my quick example where I said trained 1,000 African professionals, leading to 50% of them getting, I use numbers, 1,000 and 50%. And that helps people think more in terms of these were the actual results that you had. If let's say you're a writer, you're in the media space, and you were able to help your media organization increase their viewership with your program, that is something you want to highlight, because what do a lot of media companies care about? They care about whether they're reaching their audiences. If you are a lawyer and you were able to win a certain number of cases successfully, you want to highlight that kind of stuff, right? So you also want to make sure that you're only adding relevant details. So things like adjectives, yeah, you might think that the design you did was pretty, but not everybody will think that design was pretty. So remove the word pretty and just say designed XYZ, right? So adjectives are something that you want to look out for, especially if you need more room to be able to share information. Use strong active words. So you can easily do a search for this and do a search for strong active words and also do a search for words to avoid because people end up using the same words. So when you see a word that, let's say, a lot of other people use, you want to also do a search for synonyms so that you're saying the same thing, but you're saying it in a different way. And usually, if I'm reading and I'm used to seeing people use the same word, and I see someone use a different word, my brain will stop and I will zone in on it. So that's the kind of impact you want to have on recruiters. And then the final thing, make sure you proofread for grammar, tenses, and typos. And when you're proofreading, make sure you're asking other people to proofread too, because you will definitely miss something. I think a lot of you said that your resumes were pretty good. I can bet you that if you gave me your resume today, I can highlight a few things you can improve. And so that's the thing to keep in mind. And as you're moving through your career, whether you are entry level or already mid level, what I highly recommend is to create a master document. This could be your CV if you want to call it that, but create a master document where at every job, you highlight the details. And anytime you achieve something, you write it down. Because after you leave a job, it becomes very hard for you to remember what you achieved. So as you're achieving things and accomplishing things, just write one sentence or some bullet points about what you did and what you achieved, so that when it's time for you to fine tune your resume, all you do is you go to this master document and you literally have everything you have ever done. And this is not just with regards to work. This is with regards to extracurriculars. If you managed your parents' shop, if you worked on a farm, if you were an executive in your church, all of that, everything you've ever done, and it has been able to add value to someone else or to a community, or it has been an avenue for you to hone yourself in some way, could potentially be something for a resume down the line. So try and write that stuff down somewhere so that you don't forget. You also want to make sure that you're not using jargon. So especially for if you're like in the sciences and you are trying to transition into a non-science background, let's say you're in biology and you're moving into a different space, don't use those. I mean, I'm sure you like the terms, but if I don't understand it, it's going to stress me out. So you don't want the person who is reviewing your resume to feel stupid. That's the point. And you're not even sure whether the person reviewing your resume is in the same industry as you, because usually the first level person who's going to review your CV might be more of a general professional. They might not necessarily be the expert in the field that you're looking to go into. So try and keep it simple so that they can understand what you're saying. I've already talked about making sure you avoid adjectives. Don't use the first person. So don't say I. You have to adopt a professional tone. So instead of saying something like, I developed 5 policy briefs over a 3-month period, I would say developed 5 policy briefs over a 3-month period. Eliminate the I and then start with the action verb. This is up for debate, but personally on a resume, don't include your age, your weight, your date of birth, marital status, your gender, ethnicity, religion, political affiliations. Don't do it. Why? Because when you include such details, you kind of set yourself up to be, how do I describe it? You kind of make it such that if the person reviewing your CV has a bias against any of these things, then yeah, they can use that bias against you. So don't include that information. Also, don't include your photo. If they really want to see you, they should give you an interview, right? So don't include any of that stuff. Very important is don't lie. I know that it's very hard sometimes when you feel like, oh, I have so much to offer and nobody else can see that. But the minute you lie and start lying on your resume, it will eventually crop up somewhere because someone somewhere knows what you've actually done. So please do not over embellish things and keep things to the point. And I've already talked about the formatting and why that's important for the ATS. Make sure you're using legible fonts. So Times New Roman, Arial, Calibri are good ones. Font sizes wise, 10 to 12 points is fine. 12 to 14 point for titles is fine. And then also pay attention to your margins, because with resumes, there are little tricks that you use to create more space so that you can write more. And one of those tricks is to extend the margins of the document, but make sure that you're not extending it so it's falling off the side, because if I can't read your whole sentence, then what's the point? So you need to be very strategic with your formatting. Now, after you have your resume down, and let's say you have your cover letter as well, the process of submitting your application is equally as important. And I would even say maybe more important than all of the resume fine tunings, because before I see your resume, I see the email that you send to me or the application submission. That is what I will encounter first. So make sure your entire application pack is targeted to the job. Make sure your documents have been edited and proofread, and make sure the Word document that you are doing all your edits on is appropriately named. The format I like to use is I use my full name and I indicate that it's a resume, and then I put the company name, that the company I'm looking to apply into, and the position I'm applying for. Sometimes I might apply, include the month and year. And usually I included the month and year when I was really applying for many different jobs, so that I could keep track of when I sent this resume, right? So that you can also keep track of that stuff. So that's the format I recommend. Make sure you convert your Word document into a PDF. It is very important. If it's not a PDF and it arrives, depending on my emailing system or the machine I'm using, all your formatting can move. And so you might have formatted it to look really nice and clean, but when it arrives to me, if it's not in a PDF, it could be all over the place, and that goes against you. Also, if you don't have it in a PDF, it means that at any point in time, someone can change the information. A Word document can be edited. I mean, PDF too, to a degree, but for a person to change a PDF, it means actually they must really be aggressive in some way. They must really want to change it. But Word documents is very easy for things to be changed. So make sure that it's in a PDF. All your documents that you're submitting are in a PDF. This is one of the mistakes I made first, very early on. And so I'm stressing it, because things like that can just put a recruiter off and they won't even get back to you. And then make sure that your introductory email is drafted and ready to go. So when it comes to the email message, it needs to be clear, concise, and professional. Remember when I said that your email message can be like your cover letter. So for instance, if I was sending in a job application, they did not ask for a cover letter. What I would say is, okay, hi, my name is Jemila Abdulai. I have a master's degree in blah, blah, blah. I care about working at the nexus of development and media, and I have built a digital platform focused on health tech, for example. It gives a very quick summary of my academic qualifications, what I'm interested in, and something interesting about me. If this job is getting a lot of applications and they are reading and everybody is saying, "Dear sir, madam, please find attached my job application," and then they read mine, they're gonna be like, hold up, who is this person? It's going to make them stop. Why? Because you personalized yourself. You made yourself human. You didn't just make yourself another job candidate, right? So make sure that you take some time to craft a professional email message. I'd say no more than 2 paragraphs. Don't make it long. It's not a cover letter. You just give a snippet, and make sure that you proofread that as well. I've talked about professional email address. Make sure that the name that pops up when you send an email is also professional. So it should not just be your first name. I want to see your full name. You can edit that in the settings tab of if it's Gmail or Yahoo or whatever, you can edit that. And then make sure that you're submitting it to the right recipient. For many people, it's hard to figure out who is receiving the application. So that's why a lot of people use Dear Sir or Madam. But I would say that in most cases, these days at least, the job description will tell you who to address the application to. So address it to that person. Even better is if you can find out, if let's say they say to the HR manager, a simple LinkedIn search of the company name and HR might tell you who the HR manager is. Or if it's a company you can just call them and say, oh, I'm applying for a job. Who should I address this to? And they will tell you. And why that is important again is if I receive an email that says, Dear Jemila, I'm probably going to pay more attention to it than if I receive an email that says, Dear Madam. And personally, I don't even like Madam, so that's even worse, right? So take some time to do research on who you should be addressing things to and make sure that you have the right name, role, and salutation. If you absolutely do not know if this person is a man or a female. So this happens a lot because we live in a global environment now. So you might be applying to someone who's from a different part of the world. You cannot tell if their name is male for male or female. Then just write their name. Don't put Mr. or Mrs. or anything. No. And for women, when you're addressing women, don't call them Miss, M-I-S-S, or Mrs., M-R-S, because you do not know their marital status. Use MS, which covers everything. So these little things can help ensure that when you submit your application, you're not ticking the person off in the wrong way. And then have a clear email subject, job application, position, and title, right? So that when I see it, immediately I know that, oh, this is an email I need to check quickly because they're applying for a job and not just another email I'm getting. Yeah, and if all of this checks out, then you're usually ready to send. Okay, so I know that we are running short of time. We started a bit late, so I'll continue. But in the meantime, share your top job search and resume or CV insight in the chat box. Like, what is something that you are taking away from this segment? Let me take a look at the questions real quick. Okay. Okay, so someone said, can you list the job websites you mentioned? In Ghana, I heard Jobberman. So I said Jobberman. I also said Monster. Hold on, let me just go back real quick. I'm giving you guys a bit of time to type in your information, and then I'll respond to a few questions so that I make sure I'm answering your questions. So for whoever asked this, you can just take a look at this screen. Okay, someone said, what's a professional email and how do I create one? A professional email basically is an email address that easily identifies who you are. So whatever your official name is, that is what your email should be. It should not be, I'll give an example. My very first email, this was when I was in primary school or JSS, so please don't judge me, was X_citing_2001. Like, yeah, I was a teenager who was like trying to have fun and thought I was cool and thought my life was exciting. And the year was 2001. So that was the email I had. But it's not the email that you would use when applying for a job, because if I receive that as a recruiter, I'm like, who is this person and why are they not serious? That's the question I'm going to ask. So your professional email is an email that basically has your name. So if your name is Jemila Abdulai, my email, for example, will have my first initial and my last name, or Jemila.Abdulai. So that kind of email address is a professional email. Great. Aisha says the relevant experience is always challenging to explain. Relevant experience essentially is anything that could potentially be of value to the new opportunity that you're going into. So if, let me think real quick if I can come up with one relevant experience. Okay, so one of the things that I did when I was studying in France was I was what you call an animator for a summer club for children, meaning I was basically in a way their nanny. right? I was there with them. I was following them. I was coming up with activities for them to be busy. I was coming up with interesting things to get them to learn English. That's what I was doing. If I was applying for a job as a teacher, that could be relevant experience because one, I've already worked with children in a different language as well. Two, part of my job was coming up with exciting, interesting ways for them to learn a new language. And three, yeah, so those two things, for example. So that is an example of relevant experience. The main thing is figuring out how does previous experience link to this new experience that you are going into. So I hope that answers your question, Aisha. Yeah. Okay, let's see here. Can we say leadership experience is same as work experience? Can we merge two in CV under work experience heading? Yeah, you could do that. But if you're doing that, that means you're probably using the chronological CV. So remember what I said about it depends on the CV formats that you're using. So depending on the type of CV you're using, you could use that. Or you can, if you're focused on the functional skills CV, that's where you will have the leadership because you want to highlight, I have leadership skills, like I can make things happen. But if you only want to showcase your work history, then you go more chronological. Okay, so I'm moving on. We'll come to breaks in your career soon, okay? Because I think that will fit under networking. I've taken note of it, Nancy, thank you. So now, how do you communicate effectively to build professional connections? A big part of job search is networking. And I don't think a lot of people realize that because we think that we can sit in our homes and apply online and that's it. Nah, you also have to be actively networking with other people so that if there's anything that might be interesting, they know that, oh, this is what you're interested in, and they can, flag you. One big thing that you need for networking is your introduction. So to establish an initial connection these days, these are the different ways that we might do it. We might do it by email, LinkedIn, or social media. I've gotten so many messages, DMs on Instagram and Twitter about jobs. And in many cases, people do it wrong. So we're going to talk about that soon. Your job application portal might also be an initial connection. That's if they ask for a cover letter. Remember how I said it adds flesh to the skeleton. So same thing there. And then if you're doing it in person, your elevator pitch is probably what's going to help you establish an initial connection. So when you're forging connections over email, this is an example, or email, social media, or LinkedIn. This is an example of something that I received in 2015. And I haven't changed anything. The person literally sent me a message on LinkedIn and said, Jemila, I need a job, kindly assist, thanks. I never knew this person, had never seen this person, had never interacted with this person. And unfortunately for this person, I was not in a good mood that day. And so I responded, so do I, all the best. I think I was planning to leave my job at the time. And so they just annoyed me. And then later I came back and said, like, go and read how to actually ask people for assistance over email. So what you don't want to do is ask for a job. Do not ask this person for a job because you don't know if they are even in the capacity to give you a job. And you don't even know what their own circumstances are in the job that they're in. So what you should do is what I have on the right-hand side. So dear Miss, plus their name, you introduce yourself first. You need to introduce yourself so that this person knows who they're talking to. So my name is Jemila Abdulai. I am a second-year Ghanaian student at Johns Hopkins, finishing up my master's in international economics and African development. I've told them my name. I told them I'm in my second year, meaning I'm about to finish school. And I've told them what I'm getting my master's in, and I told them I was Ghanaian. Why did I include Ghanaian? Probably this person I was writing to was Ghanaian, so connection point. Then you talk a bit about your background or your interests and what you're looking to do. Having worked primarily in communications, I would like to gain some insight into work across Africa, especially XYZ. I'm applying for internship programs and would like to get a sense of work culture and skills. So this is someone who I was contacting at an organization that I was interested in. And I wanted to know, like, how do they work over there? Is it fast paced? What kind of skills do they want, etc. And then I ask, are you available for an informational interview? And I offer to call them by Skype or phone, right? If this was non-COVID times and they're based in Ghana, I would say that's where I could offer, oh, I would like to offer you some, like to offer to take you out to coffee so that we can have a conversation. Or I might say, can I speak to you for like 10, 15 minutes, schedule a call with you for 10 to 15 minutes. So that is basically the format. You want to introduce yourself, give a quick background, then give insight into some of your interests, and then be very clear on what you want from the person and ask them directly. So I'm going to skip this part because we've talked about it, but this is an example. This is the application I was talking about where I sent it as 4 attachments, no less, as Word documents. Do not do this. But what you need to pay attention to here is the email, right? So the email, again, I didn't just say, find attached my job application. I said, I'm interested in applying for X. This is what I'm interested in, and I'm available from this time. And then in this case, you needed to have work authorization. So I said, I already have that, all that information there. And then I made myself available because I never heard back from this. Oh, actually, no, I did get this job. But what I did with making everything Word documents, I should not have done. I should not have done that. It should have been a PDF, unless, of course, they specifically asked for Word, then that's different. Okay, another example on LinkedIn. And this is especially great for event follow-up. So this is something that someone sent to me, right, after they attended an event where I spoke at. So he did everything right. Hello, Ms. Abdulai, my name is blah. We met at, so context and connection point. He gave me even the day. You sat by me and I introduced myself and asked for your complimentary card, right? So he gave me the exact thing that happened when we met. I also asked to connect with you, and that is the purpose of this note. So I've sent you an invitation. I just want you to know, thank you for the insight. I look forward to connecting with you. He could have easily just sent a friend request and not added anything. But because he added this and I'm like, oh yeah, I did sit next to you, I responded and accepted him. So that's another way of forging connections, especially when it's at events and you're trying to talk to speakers and panelists. Most of the time there's a lot going on. So you might want to just get their card and then follow up afterwards, and try to follow up soon afterwards so that they can remember who you are. Now, when you're beginning to network on LinkedIn, what you need to do is take stock of your existing network. If you have an email, they have an email import contacts tool on LinkedIn. So use that to pull in all your email addresses. And then you can see who you already know who is also on LinkedIn. You can also ask for introductions or make introductions, and by extension, referrals and recommendations. So let's say that one of you is looking to go into the health sector. And I know someone, you've looked at my LinkedIn and you've seen that I know someone who works in the health sector, and you want to be connected with the person in the health sector. Because you and I know each other, you can request that I introduce you to this other person, right? And so if you request that I introduce you to this other person, that person, because they also know me, is more likely to pay attention to you. So this is where networking comes in, right? You can also use the people you may know feature to identify and leverage mutual connections. Pretty much all of the social media platforms will tell you who you have in common. So when you follow someone, it will usually tell you, oh, this and this other person that you know follows them. That's good information, because if ever you want to be connected to them, all you need to do is see who you know best among those mutual connections and say, oh, how well do you know this person? Could I get an introduction? Connection points are very important. Connection points and interests. So your school groups are connection points. The companies you've already worked at are connection points. Influencers could be a connection point. But the important thing is get to the point, be friendly but professional, and have a clear ask. Those of you who like saying dear, 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 hey dear, hey darling, no, that is not professional, especially if you've never reached out to this person before. You need to make sure that, unless of course you're saying dear Jemila, that's different. But hey dearie, nah, all of that, from someone like me, I'm just like, I don't know you. That's my immediate reaction. Of course, sometimes I let it slide, but a lot of the times I'm just like, nah, like we're not that familiar. So even when you're reaching out on social media, keep in mind that for this person, this might be the first time you're reaching out to them. And especially if it's someone you've been following for a very long time, the fact that you feel like you know them does not mean that they feel like they know you. Very important. So for those of you who are reaching out to like mentors or people you admire, that kind of thing, yeah, you still have to introduce yourself, whether it's in person or online. And then I've talked about the informational interview. Another thing you can do on LinkedIn is endorse people. They have these endorsements thing where I might endorse, let's say, Gary for journalism because I know he's a great journalist, right? But when I do that, then what I'm actually doing is I'm adding value to him, because if an opportunity comes up and the prospective employer sees that, oh, Gary has a lot of endorsements for journalism, that's helping him. And then he can also do the same thing for me with regards to, let's say, digital skills trainings, right? So try to endorse people who you can vouch for, and then you can also request endorsements from them. Why is this important? LinkedIn is also built on keywords. Everything online is very much built on keywords. So the endorsements that you get, the ones that you get the most endorsements for, LinkedIn prioritizes them. You can shift the order a bit, but typically, if you don't move things around yourself, that's what LinkedIn is going to prioritize. And so your profile is going to be associated with those keywords. And when a recruiter goes on LinkedIn to look for people who might be a match for a job, that's where your profile is going to pop up. So also pay attention to those little things. We talked about getting through the door with internships, volunteering. You can also do that with freelancing. Another important thing is branding yourself and sharing relevant content. I already talked about, if you are very passionate about a topic, you can write articles about it. You could do a podcast about it, because now we have a lot of audio tools as well. You could create videos about it, right? All of these things indirectly highlight your expertise. We're going to have a webinar on August 22nd that is focused on social media marketing for professionals. So if you're interested in that, you can send an email and I'll let you know when that is available for purchase. Then the other thing you need to do, if nothing is coming along, please create the opportunity you're looking for. Create the opportunity you're looking for. And this will likely take you more on the entrepreneurship route. But even if it doesn't, what it enables you to do is, when you say, I'm going to try something new, you begin to look out for opportunities to learn. And remember what I said, especially when you're starting out your career or moving into a new space, your focus should be learning. So you want to hardwire your brain and your mind and prepare yourself to learn. So if you say, okay, I haven't seen this kind of a project and I care about this issue, so I'm going to try to start that project. What you're going to start doing, whether you like it or not, unless of course you're not serious, is you're going to start asking people questions linked to that project. You're going to start doing research online. When you're listening to the radio and something that could potentially aid you in achieving that project comes up, your ears are going to perk up and you're going to pay more attention to that. You're going to start watching movies and listening to podcasts and reading books related to that issue. And I'm willing to bet that by the time you're done with that project, whether it is a successful project or not, you know more about that issue than you did before. So sometimes as you wait, you hustle while you wait. You create the opportunity for yourself. And in the process, you learn the skills so that when your next best career opportunity comes up, you have something to tell. You can highlight this project that you worked on and the things that you learned from it and how that can be of value to your next employer. The final thing is to upskill, to learn skills for the future of work, to add value to yourself. You guys are already doing that because you're on this webinar, and I encourage you to still do that. There's so many free tools out there right now. LinkedIn has LinkedIn Learning, where you can take courses and get certifications. YouTube is a great place for learning. Apple has the iTunes, I think it's iTunes University, where you can take courses from top universities all over the world and just like learn. So as much as possible, use this period where you're looking for your next job to fine tune your skills and learn. That really should be the focus as you wait, so that by the time the interview comes along, you can say, look, I've been job searching for the past 4 months, and guess what? My resume is a bit outdated now because now I have financial accounting or financial modeling skills, and I taught myself, and that adds value. So yeah. But as you are networking, I think in Ghana, especially when we think about networking, we just think about the initial connection. Oh, I want a job, so I'll only connect with you when I want the job. But you need to think long-term about networking and broaden your impressions of what networking is. Networking is about building relationships, and building relationships can last a lifetime. So as you're approaching people, be authentic. Don't try to be somebody you're not. Like, don't try to position yourself because you think this is the kind of person this person is going to be more open to. No, come as yourself. Of course, be respectful in that process. Offer value. What do I mean by offering value? Many people think that the only people who have something to offer are the people who they are looking up to. But that's not the way the world works, right? You can learn as much from, I don't like to use this analogy, but I'll use it because it works. You can learn as much from people who are below you, in quotes, as much as from people who are above you. So a lot of the things that I have learned, I've actually learned from like my mentees or from younger people who I end up working with, right? And if I was only focused on, oh, how can I learn from this, whoever guru in what, master of what, then chances are I wouldn't gain those new insights, because those people who are in quotes up here are inundated. They probably get thousands of requests a month from people like you who want to learn something from them. Meanwhile, there are people at this level with you, maybe in a different industry, or at this level, who might offer you something of more value than this person you're looking up to here. So try not to get swayed by the statuses and the titles. Nah, don't pay attention to that stuff. Pay attention to people who are doing good work and people who know their stuff. And sometimes the people who know their stuff are not the people who are front facing. That's the truth. The people who are front facing are probably front facing because they're good at front facing. They might not necessarily know the stuff at the grassroots. Depth and not breadth. Don't focus on how many people you can have in your network. Focus on substance. Focus on having a few targeted people in your network who add value to you. If you have thousands of people in your network and none of them will be willing to have a conversation with you, there's a problem somewhere, right? Build bridges, not ladders. This is especially for those of us who are transitioning out of our careers and going into new careers. Please make sure that you try to leave on a good note, because you never know when you are going to circle back to that person or when you're going to meet that person down the line. And if you left with a sour taste in your mouth, it becomes harder to potentially work together later. Or maybe you were supervising them and now they are the supervisor who's deciding whether you get the job. You never know what's going to happen. So try to be respectful all around. And finally, don't feel entitled. I see this a lot from students where they think that they're entitled to my time because I make myself available. So you think you can message me at 11 p.m. and expect a response by 11:05. It's not going to happen. And especially if you have that sense of entitlement, it's very off-putting. So try as much as possible not to be entitled. People who decide to help you are helping you because they want to and not because they are required to. For the elevator pitch, is very similar to everything I've already discussed in that it's an introduction of yourself. Typically, it's in 30 seconds to a minute. But basically, the format that you want to use, I already gave a sample of my elevator pitch. You want to focus on who you are and what you do. That's your background. What makes you unique and why whoever you're talking to should care. Why you want the job, if it's a job that you're pitching for, or what you're targeting in your job search. So I might say, oh, I have a background in this and this, but I'm actually really fascinated by astronomy. And so I took a course in astronomy, and now I'm looking for jobs that will enable me to study the way the sun rises over Ghana, whatever. I'm just making that up. But that gives you a sense of, I'm telling them this is the kind of job opportunity I'm looking for, but I'm not asking them for the job. And then your call to action. Do you happen to know any astronomers who you can connect with me with? That's like a call to action or my ask. And then your closeout. Okay, thank you very much. I will get in touch with you over email as discussed, or I'll give you a call as you suggested, that kind of thing. So, okay, I think we are pretty much done here. If you have any questions, now is the time to ask those questions. I know we went over time. Sorry about that. I wanted to make sure that you guys got all the information that you needed. I think I had, okay, there are a few questions here I'm going to answer. Nancy had asked, how do you deal with breaks in your career? Okay, so if you have periods of time where you are not employed, the question that a lot of recruiters will have is, what were you doing while you were not working at XYZ company, right? So this is where things like the courses you are learning come into play. This is where if you were doing any volunteering or internships come into play. This is where if you started your own project or your own business, that kind of thing comes into play. So, I mean, it might look like, when you look at the resume, it might look like, oh, there's a gap of 3 years on this person's resume. But in reality, you were doing something, even if it was something as simple as you were taking care of your health. That's also important. So pay attention to the things that you do even during the breaks and note them down. So if I was to, let's say, decide to go back to 9-to-5 world, for example, and people will see that my last, in quotes, formal job was in 2014 and we are in 2020 now, and they ask me, what have you been doing this whole time? This is where I can list all of the things that I've been doing with my own business, because I have been working, even though I've not been working for an employer. So Nancy, I hope that helps. I don't know if that was the question, like you're asking with regards to resumes, or if you're talking more like mentally, how do you deal with, let's say, if you lose a job or you can't find a job? I will say, yeah, focus on learning and it will happen. I know that sometimes it's very frustrating. I actually had a call last night from someone who took this exact workshop. I think it was about six or 7 months ago. And she was also very frustrated. And yesterday she was like, Jemila, I'm getting so many calls now and I don't know what happened, but they're all like asking me to work for them. And I'm like, and guess what? You use this whole time to gain new skills. So now you are even more valuable to them and you can actually negotiate for higher if you need to. So I know it can be very hard sometimes, but look at such breaks as opportunities to rest, to review things, to reflect, to try something new, to learn new skills, right? Okay, so I hope that answers your question. Do I have to add skills I learned on my own to my CV, Joshua? Yes, please learn skills, add skills that you learned on your own. Blogging is something that I learned on my own. Creating videos and websites is something that I learned on my own. Everything you learn on your own, so long as you can do it and you can stand by it, please put it on your CV. You don't need to tell them that you learned it on your own. But when you get down to, let's say, your cover letter, this is where you can highlight something like, oh, I have a passion for learning and I'm a fast learner. I even taught myself XYZ using resources online. So if you could do this on your own, imagine if you're in a company setup where you have team members who can help you, then Charlie, you are going to fly, right? So please highlight that stuff. It's very important. Okay, next question. Is there a particular way of listing your referees? So this question about referees, I've seen different things. People say different things about listing your references. I know in the American resume context, you don't include your references because you want them to contact you. And if they want your references, then that will require them to contact you to say, can we have your references? But I know with the CV, many of us list our references. So if you do decide to list your references, what I highly recommend is first, get permission from your referees. Make sure that the people you choose as your referees are people who can vouch for you, people who will gas you up, people who will say how amazing you are. If you make a mistake and pick the wrong referee, they'll spoil your chances. So you need to make sure that even when you are in school or in church or in the community or at the mosque or in your current job, make sure that you're building relationships so that you have people who know you and can speak on your behalf. These are the people you might ask to be your referees. Your referees are not always your supervisors. That's the other thing. If you have someone you worked on a volunteer passion project with and your supervisor, and the person who worked on the passion project with you knows you better than your supervisor, or yeah, pick your passion project. Do not pick the supervisor, because if they didn't actually get a sense of you, they cannot speak on your behalf. So first, make sure that you get their permission, pick the right person, get their permission. And typically with the referees, I will put their name, I'll put their title, because that's usually important. I'll put the company, and then I don't really like to put phone number just because I don't prefer to be called up randomly. I will usually put email address. But if you've spoken to them and they're okay getting a phone call, you can put their phone number as well. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, Nancy, great. I'm happy that I answered your question about having a break in your career on your resume. Okay, Ama's question, what do you do when a past job where you did pretty good work no longer exists? Do you still put them in your resume? Resumes you send out, also what you have on your LinkedIn? Yes. The fact that the company doesn't exist doesn't mean that you didn't do work there, right? So my first job in Ghana, I actually got my very first job in Ghana right after SSS, which was, now it's normal, back then it wasn't. And that company no longer exists. I think it closed shop like 2 years after I left, but it was still on my resume because I still did a lot of work there. And for things like that, this is where you might want to have, let's say, a recommendation from whoever you worked with there. So you can have them send you a recommendation or give you a recommendation on LinkedIn. Why? Because recruiters actually check this stuff. They check your social media, they check your LinkedIn. So they might not ask you directly all the time, but they've probably checked. And even if they do not check, but you did really good work, you can still highlight that in your cover letter. I worked at XYZ company until they closed in so and so year. And while there, I did ABC. So yes, please include it. Okay. Okay, we're getting a lot of questions now. So I'm going to take the last 5 questions. So room for 2 more questions, and then we will be closing up shop. I'm seeing there are some comments in the chat too, so let me check there first. How do you renegotiate your salary after the interview and before you sign the contract? So salary negotiation is another topic on its own. But what I would say is when you want to renegotiate your salary, also it's not just salary, your compensation, because sometimes you might not get an increase in the money they pay you, but you might be able to get perks, like maybe they'll add on transport stipend or health insurance, or they will say, okay, will allow you to go for a professional development course or something like that. But the main thing here is you need to capture what value you had to them over the period of time you were working with them. If you were able to learn any new skill sets or gain any new experience that could help the company or organization move forward, you want to highlight that. And most importantly, you want to highlight results. What were you able to achieve? How were you able to get the company to achieve its own goals? That kind of thing. There's an article on Circumspecte on salary negotiation. So I suggest just go there and read it. It gives some tips on how to negotiate your salary in that way. And then how do you deal with pressures from family, friends, society to get busy after a break when all you want to do is rest? Charlie, as for the pressure from society, dear, that one is something that we have to work with. And I would say the most important thing is your why. You always have to come back. When we started this webinar, I talked about the importance of knowing why you are doing certain things. And from my experience, that is what will keep you on track. It's not to say that you won't have days where you are like, why am I doing this? I don't want to do this. You will have those days. Those days will come. But you will remind yourself about why this is important for you, because ultimately we're different people, and something that might work for one person might not necessarily work for another person. When I left my job in what year was that? 2015, sorry. When I left my job in 2015, I had people saying, why did you leave the job? It pays very well. Are you sure you want to do that? Don't you want to go back? And it was hard because you have all these people talking, and these are people who care about you for the most part. So you also know that they care about you. But yeah, stay true to your why and give yourself a timeline. Timelines are very important because you might think that, oh, it's going to work out eventually. But you need to also check yourself, because some of us, we live in our dreams. And the reality is the world is not ready for you, or what you are trying to dream up for the world is not practical, it's not feasible, it won't work. That's the truth. So give yourself a time frame of, okay, I am resting for the next 3 months. I'm using that time to improve my skill sets, to explore other opportunities, to connect with my family and friends. But at the 3-month line, you tell yourself, Amma, we need to have a chat. Me and you have a meeting, and we need to assess what the situation is and decide if it is practical to continue in this way. As I mentioned before, there is no shame in taking a job just so that you can pay your bills. It's important. You need to be able to survive. You need to be able to earn an income. And sometimes your dream job takes a while. So you need to have a backup plan and look at what are the other options that are available for you to make ends meet. So yeah, it's a mix of staying true to yourself, but also being practical. Next question. Can we normalize rest even if we're in the prime of our career and want to take some time off and focus on our mental health? I like to think of mental health as, it's not necessarily taking a break from everything, but it's figuring out how can you inject moments of rest into your day-to-day. That's the important thing. So for a lot of people, I know a lot of my Christian friends do quiet time in the morning. That's a period of rest. Or you come back from work and you might go for a walk, 30-minute walk. That could be a period of rest. Or over weekends, maybe you don't go anywhere. There are some weekends where you're like, fine, all the weddings and, naming ceremonies and all these social events are fine, but every 2 weeks, I have time for myself, that kind of thing. So my recommendation there is schedule rest into your day-to-day, because if we say we are going to wait for a period where we rest, I don't know if that's ever really going to happen indefinitely, unless, Charlie, you made it and you're done. But I don't think we're ever really make it. Like we're always evolving. So figure out how to fit it into your schedule. What if the skills you have are not necessarily related to the job you're applying for, like applying for a quality control chemist at an online refinery, but you are good at making butters and food recipe development? I mean, what you've said, I don't know too much about being a chemist, but what I can see here is both require recipes, right? So if you're a chemist, it requires process, it requires knowing what and what and what to mix. And you are doing that already with body butters and food recipe development. So those are transferable skills. It might not be the exact thing, but at least you know the process, you know how to put things together to achieve a certain goal. So those are the kind of things that you want to highlight. Those are the things that you call transferable skills, is where you take something in a sector that might not be related to what you're looking to go into, and you look at what possible linkages there might be between the two, and you highlight that. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, final questions, and then we're closing this. Do I apply for any job I see online not related to my field? Apply for jobs that you're interested in. If you apply for a job just for the sake of applying for a job, number one, as a recruiter, I can probably tell. Number two, you will be miserable at your job. So please try to apply for jobs that you are at least interested in. That's very important. Just like adding your email address, do you need to add your LinkedIn name on your CV? Yes, so all the things I said about the information you can add on your resume are things you could potentially add on your CV. The only difference is the CV has more space and the order in which you would include that information. So yeah, you can apply that there too. Great. How far back should you go when listing your job experiences? I would say it depends. If you're going with the chronological resume, you probably will be able to fit, let's say, 3 to 4 jobs on there, right? So chronologically, I don't know how often you change jobs, but you might be able to list like 3 to 4 jobs. If you're doing like a combination resume or a functional resume, then the focus there is on experience. And so it doesn't really matter when the job happened. The main point is you got that experience and you have those skill sets. So it depends on the type of resume you're using. How can you capture actively babysitting your nieces and nephews spanning years if you're not seeking teaching jobs? You can capture that under your miscellaneous, where you have, let's say, interests or hobbies. You can capture that there. So you can have something like enjoy spending time with children, or if it's something that, let's say, temporary jobs that you ended up doing, let's say you're still a student, I'm assuming, but if you're still a student, for example, that could be something you put under volunteering because they are not your children and you are helping people out. So yeah, you could capture that under those two elements if necessary. How do you apply for a job when you're not sure what you want to do? Does passion matter when job searching? Yes, passion matters. It matters, but again, if it is a question of bread and butter, Charlie, I need to make money because I need to pay bills, then at that point, you are being very strategic. It's not necessarily, oh, I love this job. There have been jobs that I've done because I needed money. One of them is grant proposal writing. I hate grant proposal writing. I really detest it. But when I was studying as a grad school student, I needed money because I was poor, I was broke, and I needed money to be able to pay for my school books and to live where I was living. So I took those jobs as necessary. Those are bread and butter jobs. You're doing it because you need to survive. That's it. So I would say look at both, or focus on the passion jobs, but have a time frame within which you're looking for those jobs. If they are not working out, pay attention to the kind of jobs people come to you for. That's another way to figure out what kind of jobs you might be able to apply for. If people keep coming to you because, Chale, I like the way you prepare your food. Oh yeah, why are you applying for jobs when people are ready to buy your food? Or why are you not doing both? So pay attention to what people come to you for. That's also a good indicator of things you're good at or things that people will be willing to pay you money for. Okay, I think all of the questions have been answered. The rest of the comments I see here are just, I love the talk. Thank you for the insightful session. And I appreciate that to you guys too. So thank you guys for sticking around. I know that it took a little while. Last question from Stephen. Ideal page limit for a CV. Minimum is 2 pages. I would say don't go beyond, keep it at 2 pages. People don't read that much these days. Keep it at 2 pages. Unless, of course, if you're you have a science or research background, then you have a lot more information you need to put in there. Then it can go to 4 or 5 pages, but try to keep it concise. And I recommend switching to a resume. Switch to a resume because it forces you to fine tune your application to the job. And that gives you more chances of getting an interview than if you are just sending all your information to everybody. So that's what I'll say. Cover letter is 1 page. Don't go beyond 2 pages for a cover letter. Okay, So I think that's it right now. Just as a reminder, we have another webinar. This one is not a free webinar, but if you're looking to figure out how to brand yourself and position yourself online, it's on social media marketing for professionals. It will happen August 22nd. So that's just next month. And I will be sending out information on that. So you can check the website circumspect.com/thrive for that information. I'll also send it to all of you so that if you're interested, you can sign up. But it will teach you the things you need to do so that recruiters can find you online. That's what it's going to teach you. Great. And then finally, I do have an evaluation. I'm not sure where this is. I do have an evaluation, which I will share with you probably by email so that you guys can fill that evaluation for me and let me know if this was useful, if there was something that was not covered, what other sessions you might be interested in. I wish you guys the very best. I know it is not easy, but it is not impossible. It is not impossible. And a lot of it is, you kind of have to go take it a moment at a time, basically. But I want to encourage you that it can happen, and it can even happen during a pandemic, right? I hope that this was helpful. Take care and have a great start to the weekend. Okay, guys, bye. Awesome. I see some of you are still sending in comments, so I'm just gonna let you guys do that. When you're all off, I'll end the session soon. Let me just share this here. Thank you, guys. I appreciate you sticking around to the end. Okay. Bye. See you guys next time. Take care.